On today's show, some interesting trade rumors speculating around today. Could the Sixers be gearing up to do something ahead of the NBA draft? We will break it all down. Let's go.
Perfect.
What is going on, everybody? RB here. Welcome into Philly Take with RB. Like always, if you do enjoy this content, feel free to leave a like at the end. It does help out the channel. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the family and hit that bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos or live streams. We'll be dropping the last two parts of the free agency special this week. And then towards the end of the week, getting into next week, all of next week, we'll be breaking down the draft, talking draft picks, even going live, discussing what this Sixers team needs to do. And there is certainly a lot to talk about, but we have to interrupt that flow today, as once again, we have some trade rumors speculating, and these have a lot more substance. It's interesting. A couple days ago, if you have not yet, be sure to check it out. We got into some trade speculation, some trade rumors, some things getting thrown around, nothing too crazy, just thrown up in the air. And then now today, boom, we have an actual trade rumor speculating, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. I thought that once the season started to wind down, obviously a couple games left in the NBA season. And then I said, as we get closer to the draft, step by step, I do expect things to come out, into the air. And here we are. And I think there's going to be a lot more talk as we get into next week as well. But with that being said, today, Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer put out a huge piece discussing each team's thought process as they go into the draft, talking about their needs, who they may target, gave, a pick for each team. And then he also gave a little blurb about, where the team is at, what they're trying to do. And when it got to the Philadelphia 76ers, he definitely dropped a bombshell. Now, first off, his mock draft, as of right now, if the Sixers were to keep the pick, he has us taking Blake Wesley at number 23, a wing out of Notre Dame. Freshman this past year, and talked about his upside and some of the things he's able to do. Just a 19-year-old raw prospect, but he did put that in there with the intent that the Sixers may not be keeping this pick. Getting into it even further, Kevin O'Connor, in his little paragraph about the Sixers, talked about a potential trade of this 23rd overall pick along with Danny Green. And according to Kevin O'Connor, it says the Sixers are exploring trades involving this pick and Danny Green. So I would assume that means together, maybe packaging those two together, trying to get that contract off. Obviously, the Sixers still have a couple weeks, right? July 1st is when they would have to guarantee that $10 million. But as I've alluded to over the last couple weeks, I don't really anticipate them keeping this contract. I don't think they're going to opt into it by any means. Now, it is interesting that we start talking about a potential trade, right? Trying to swap that salary, maybe make an additional upgrade using Danny Green. I have more thoughts on that, which we'll get into. But continuing to read on what Kevin O'Connor said, he says, while Green was an important two-way wing for the Sixers, he tore both his ACL and LCL in his left knee in May and now has an expiring $10 million contract. If the Sixers end up trading the pick, I would imagine a raw high upside player like Wesley would have wide appeal to other teams who may be interested. If the Sixers keep it, taking a swing could pay off since they don't have a first again until 2024 after the Nets deferred this year's pick to take Philly's 2023 selection instead. That's a bet the Sixers will be worse. So, I'm kind of with Kevin on this as well. Like, the Sixers should, obviously consider staying in this selection and taking a player that they view is ready now, right, to play and contribute, because some of these guys we take end up sitting on the bench, and Doc Rivers, it's not really his MO, but I think we definitely need some type of scorer or some type of shooter or just something that can get us a spark when we need it. And I do view the 20s as guys that can do that, right? I don't think they have to sit for a year. And I think the Sixers definitely need to consider it. Now, one more thing before we give a little more elaboration. Just a note, earlier today, the Denver Nuggets made a trade sending JaMychal Green and a protected 2027 first rounder to OKC for the number 30 pick. Of course, OKC still working their magic, getting as much, picks and players and disposable contracts as they can. and 2 future seconds as well. So Denver got back the number 30 pick and 2 future seconds. Denver now has the number 21 and the number 30 in this draft. Now, you may ask me, why is that important at all? If you go back to the video we put out a couple days ago, I proposed a trade where, the Sixers could potentially send Matisse Thybulle, maybe Danny Green as well, a combination, maybe Furkan Korkmaz in there somewhere, to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for a guy like Will Barton, a guy in his early 30s who, could still play, can still score, is a little more athletic, of course, than Danny Green, can get it done on both sides of the ball, getting older, but, a 1-year contract for $14 million, a guy that you could try, whether off the bench or in the starting lineup, and really just a difference, right? Just a difference at that position that we, haven't seen in years at that position, right? Not the Danny Greens, the Covingtons, just a different element on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And, a lot of rumors floating around with the Nuggets, and now they acquire the 30th overall pick as well. So they have 2 first-rounders and then 2 future seconds. So interesting, right? They're loading up on future assets. Hey, maybe they're not done. Maybe they got rid of a contract and they loaded up on some draft stock, and now maybe they're, either going to try to climb even higher in the draft or try to package something, get a couple different players in there than what they have had. And like I said a couple days ago, maybe a change of scenery for some of these guys would work well. Definitely something to think about. Now, in terms of the Sixers and Danny Green and the 23rd pick, like I said, I don't anticipate Danny Green being back on this team. I don't think he's going to end up taking a pay cut. If he does, that just means nobody else really wants to take a chance based on his age. And what it shows me is what I believe to be true all along, is that the Sixers are trying to get rid of Danny Green. Like, they know the time is up. He's probably not going to play next season at all. Maybe if the playoffs come and he's ready to go, but I don't know. I mean, those are 2 serious injuries. And he's never had a major injury like that. So it's going to take him some time to rehab. But when I think about the Sixers, it doesn't seem like they're content on just letting him go, right? Like, it seems like they're trying to get value back. And in terms of a pick at 23, I don't think I want to include that pick in a trade for someone like Will Barton. Now, maybe if you're getting future assets back, or maybe you're swapping, right, with that 30th overall pick that they just acquired, maybe now we're talking, and maybe you can get a certain role player in here that can get something done. And it doesn't just have to be the Denver Nuggets. We just have been talking about them because there have been rumors floating around. The contracts would match well. They apparently have interest in Matisse Thybulle. Things could, build off of that nature. But overall, you got to think about this, in totality, right? Like, another thing is Tobias Harris. To move that contract, are you going to have to include a pick? Will teams not really be willing to take that contract unless you're including draft compensation? I think there's more that goes into this. Maybe Kevin O'Connor doesn't mean both of them together. Maybe he just means separately. But I just find it hard to believe, other than a salary dump and a team just getting rid of a player, that someone is going to take on Danny Green and his $10 million and allow him to opt into that. And then what, right? Like, Danny Green, like I said, he's not going to play probably for most of the season. So it's definitely interesting to think about. But the rumors are there. I know Daryl Morey's working the phone. I know he's trying to upgrade the supporting cast around these guys. Like I said, I don't see Tyrese Maxey, James Harden, Joel Embiid going anywhere. Tobias, I do think, could be up in there. And like I said, as we get closer to the draft, I would expect to hear more rumblings about a Tobias Harris trade. Now, there are people out there saying that it is likely he'll be back and that maybe the Sixers just need to build around them as best as possible. The problem is, when you're so strained against the cap, the Sixers are already over. It's like, what do you do? Right? You can dispose of a guy like Danny Green or a Matisse Thybulle, but really, you have to get one more creator. You have to get another shooter, really a mid-tier guy, in my opinion. And maybe that is Will Barton, or maybe that is a guy like that. But is a team willing to take something on? And are the Sixers really willing to give up that 23rd pick? Can they find talent at that spot in the draft? Had some trouble with it. We've also been able to acquire a guy like Tyrese Maxey at pick 21. So definitely interesting to think about. I think it's starting to come to life now. The whole Danny Green situation, he talked about it on his podcast at the end of the year. He's pretty much said, like, I understand it's business. And, at the time, he said he hadn't talked to anybody. I'm sure there have been internal conversations, and I'm sure Danny Green will probably be on board with whatever happens. He did say he wants to continue playing. and maybe a team's willing to take a chance and wait and maybe acquire a draft pick at the cost of that. But, you know, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. Trade rumor season is heating up. We'll be covering free agency. We'll be covering the draft, talking about trades. But let me tell you something. The Sixers, you know, it seems like we're in this bind here where we need to do something. We need to do something, whether that is a Danny Green swap, a Tobias Harris swap. Somehow, you know, you got to retool this roster. And that's the last thing that this shows me. You know, the Sixers aren't trying to get rid of too many names. They're not trying to, you know, completely dispose, right? They're trying to build upon, and they still view themselves as being able, you know, to be a deep contending team if they get the right supporting cast. Otherwise, you probably would have heard about a Tobias Harris trade already. You probably would have seen James Harden go, no, James Harden will be back. I'm telling you that right now. It's just a matter of when, and we'll be seeing how that plays out as well. And if he, you know, agrees to opt into a lower per year value contract, I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, but we have some real surfacing of rumblings. I do trust Kevin O'Connor and his sources, so we'll see how that builds up leading up to the draft. But those are just my thoughts. I want to hear from you down below. Would you entertain a certain type of trade for a Danny Green? Are you willing to part with that pick? Give me all your thoughts down below in the comment section. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And like always, I will catch you on the next one, man. Peace.
Perfect.